Thank you, Ms. Wyman and Mr. Pleat. So I'm going to start with Ms. Wyman. Probably mispronouncing her name, but Lori Augino?
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
She is the Director of Washington State's elections. Is that correct?
She was, yes.
She was. Following the 2020 election, the email and home addresses of Lori Augino were published on a website called Enemies of the People, along with a photo of her face in crosshairs. The website, which amplified the former president's stolen election claims, was subsequently linked to Iran. Ms. Wyman, I know that Ms. Augino is your former colleague. I'm sorry she experienced these threats. How big a problem is doxing, which is general category I've just described? And what is CISA doing to help state and local election officials guard against the release of their personal information online?
Doxing is a problem, and it is across the election community. I apologize, Senator, for getting emotional. Thank you. It was unnerving, as you can tell, when my election director's information was put out. That's part of why I joined CISA, to be honest, is to provide state and local election officials with resources that they don't have. In terms of doxing, we're working with the Department of Justice and law enforcement partners, certainly to get election officials to report incidents like getting their personal information put out on the internet, and mainly trying to build the resilience by helping election officials to have plans and be mindful of what they have out on the internet.
It's hard enough to get people to work on Election Day, isn't it?
Yes.
I found that, finding precinct committeemen at Precinct 54 in Springfield, Illinois, to sit there for 12 hours maybe or longer and to get paid a decent sum of money, but certainly not a ransom or a reward for their effort. And now to have these kinds of threats against people, and even threats that endanger their lives, it's got to be even more difficult to recruit people, is it not?
I am hearing from my colleagues across the country that they are having difficulty finding election workers, yes.
So, Mr. Polite, back to your testimony for a minute. You talked about the number of cases that are being prosecuted. Senator Grassley did as well. I was told 5. Senator Grassley referred to 4. You've said how difficult it is to really make a case, even when we have the evidence that we described this morning. Tell me the dilemma we face here. People don't want to work supervising elections and follow the law if they're going to be harassed and intimidated. I don't want them to be harassed and intimidated, but it's happening. So what's your task force doing about it?
Senator, first of all, let me just say I certainly share and the department shares the concerns related to the election community that have been raised in the video from Ms. Freeman in particular. It's very powerful testimony. The number of cases that the task force has charged to date is 5. In addition, there have been a number of state prosecutions. I believe the number is 3 at the state level. What I can tell you is that the task force over the last year has been committed and in fact conducted a review of every referral of a harassing and offensive communication that it has received. That number is over 1,000. And as I mentioned in my opening comments, Senator, the overwhelming majority of those communications, although they are certainly harassing, they are certainly disturbing, in many cases, the overwhelming majority of cases, they will not satisfy the legal standard that the First Amendment provides for proving a true threat. That is a serious threat of unlawful violence.
What about doxing? Is there anything that you're considering that will protect people like this Washington State Director of Elections from this kind of harassment and intimidation online?
Certainly, Senator. And again, part of this work of the task force is certainly leaning in on enforcement as a tool, but it cannot be the only tool that we are utilizing. It's part of the reason why we have lifted up potential grant funding for election community officials to provide security as necessary. Doxing, as you said, is certainly a very serious issue. And one of the aspects of the task force's work is, in addition to that assessment of each case for potential criminal prosecution, it is also assessed for whether there is an imminent threat of physical violence.
Well, let me ask you, before you go further, and I just have 15 seconds left.
Certainly.
When we do a survey of election officials, most of them don't know you exist. what kind of communication are you sending out that might alert them to the possibility that you're there if needed?
This has been a tremendous amount of outreach to the election community, Senator. Just recently as Monday, I was on a video call with over 600 members of the election community. That is the third such outreach I have done. The task force itself has been involved in outreach to conferences, state and local prosecutors, state and local law enforcement, members of the election community such as national associations, and in fact, I will be speaking at the National Association of Election Officials annual conference at the end of this month.
I'm going to close my questioning by saying that Senator Grassley has raised an important question. Aren't there more important things you could focus on? But if we lose the integrity of our election system that is so fundamental to our democracy, you know, I don't know if we even have a Senate Judiciary Committee when it's all said and done. We've got to really look at the basics, and the basics say protect your democracy and protect the people who, by and large, are not making a fortune, but are volunteering their time in many instances to make this election process work. And for them to be intimidated to the point where they drop out of the picture or, God forbid, there are some results that don't reflect reality, that to me is fundamental to our democracy. I thank you both. Senator Grassley.